love. So I think this is very different than how the word attachment is used in Buddhism. So remember again, attachment is here defined as a mental factor that sees its object as attractive, it exaggerates the object's attractiveness and then wishes to possess and hold the object. Which actually means that in a relationship, actually attachment sees the other person as a thing, as an object to satisfy me. So not very nice. Whereas loving kindness in a relationship is simply the wish for that person to be happy. And of course the fine print there is without expecting anything in return. What we would call unconditional love, no strings attached love. Conditional love or strings attached love is love polluted by attachment. And that sounds like this: I will love you as long as, and here comes the condition, as long as you keep saying and doing things that make me happy. Otherwise, no. So that's all attachment speaking. So the way to distinguish love or loving kindness and attachment is love or loving kindness is simply saying, I want you to be happy. Attachment is saying, I want you to make me happy. So attachment's all about me, 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 and it really sees the other person as an object to satisfy me. Now what we need to realise, of course, is that in all of our relationships, these are mixed together. And therefore our job is to distinguish these two aspects, these two dynamics, in any relationship, to increase the healthy one of loving kindness and decrease the unhealthy one of attachment as much as possible. If we do that, our relationships will improve. And what we need to realise, of course, is that attachment is pervasive in our life. And not to think, well, I think by next week I can get rid of attachment. That's not going to happen. In fact, this world we live in Buddhism is often called the desire realm. And here the word desire is synonymous with attachment. That our main driving force in our life is craving attachment. So that's something we'll be working on for the rest of our life, to reduce the craving of attachment. But the more we do, the better our relationships will be. And here also, in this regard, we often hear Buddhism say something like, we are to love everyone equally. And then when people hear that, they often get a very strange idea what that means. Often people think, okay, that means I have to spend the same amount of time with everyone and I have to behave the same way to everyone. I mean, that would be a disaster, particularly if we're talking intimate behaviour. So loving everyone equally, remember love or loving kindness is not a behaviour, it's not even an emotion. When Buddhism says to love everyone equally, what Buddhism is recommending is to equally wish everyone to be happy. That we can aspire to. And then how we would implement that would be completely dependent on our relationship with that person. That loving kindness would translate to our partner by spending a lot of time with them and maybe intimate behaviour. That same loving kindness with our family members would mean probably we'd spend less time with them and behave in a different way to them. That same loving kindness we would express with our neighbours and work colleagues in a very different way and maybe spend no time with them. So when all of that is explained, people go, maybe there is actually these two dynamics in relationships, a healthy one of loving kindness, unhealthy of attachment, and we need to increase that, decrease that. Okay, maybe that's the case, let me check it out. But I still need attachment. Because I'm a creative person and I need attachment to be creative. Actually, again, the exact opposite. Craving attachment interferes with creativity. Of course, mental afflictions like craving, attachment, jealousy, anger provide a lot of fuel for creativity, subject matter. But here we're talking about source of creativity. And the source of creativity is not the mental afflictions. In fact, creativity comes from deep within our own mind. And as long as our mind is agitated or disturbed by the mental afflictions, we are actually suffocating our creativity. So if we work to reduce our mental afflictions like craving, attachment and so forth, you'll find you'll become more creative. And now we tend to be creative for a little bit of a selfish motivation in terms of, look at me, how wonderful a musician or artist I am, aren't I good? Whereas I think the truly great creative people are the ones who use their creative talents to inspire others for a good purpose. So if we reduce our mental afflictions, we'll become more creative for a more meaningful reason. So therefore, if we work to reduce and eliminate craving and attachment, we'll enjoy the simple pleasures in life more, our relationships will improve, and we'll become more creative for a more meaningful reason. So it's going to be a win-win-win situation. Any questions before we look at how to deal with attachment?
In the meditation, when you say that we will wish for someone else to have all they need, so what do you mean by that?
Well, I said in the short term and the long term, meaning we should also look out for people short term. You know, if they're hungry, no point in saying, I wish you genuine happiness. I mean, maybe you can give them some food, you know. If they're nowhere to stay, give them a house to live in or something. So we need to take care of immediate things, but of course we need to, in the terms of long term, then we wish them to be able to develop their mind, to eliminate their mental afflictions and so forth, to achieve that genuine happiness. So may they find all the conditions and that necessary so that they can do that themselves, but of course not neglecting the immediate conditions that to live in. So both we need to take care of.
So by immediate conditions you mean like physical conditions?
Yeah, physical conditions, yeah.
And food and like the basics, not...
Yeah, and then also people supporting them, and we need to because I mean, if people are hungry and they're not going to meditate, they're not going to work on that. I mean, because we have to take care of the immediate things first. We need to find those good conditions, then we can go further. So we can do both. Yeah. Okay, how to deal with attachment. So of course the first step is to have a clear understanding of what is attachment and the disadvantages of attachment. Because if we don't have that, if we have this idea that attachment is actually useful, then we're never going to want to give it up because we'll think it brings us something in our life. So that first, the clear understanding will give us the aspiration to work with it, to reduce and eliminate. But then I think together with that, there's another thing we need to work on. And that is to develop this view of genuine happiness. Because if we don't work on that, and we have our worldview as the source of my happiness is out there, then of course we're going to want that stuff out there. So attachment will follow. Whereas if we can really shift that worldview to understand the real source of happiness is not anywhere out there, it's within our own mind, then it's going to be much easier to start to let go of attachment. So how do we actually then, what do we do with attachment when it's arising and deal with it? One of the key elements here is mindfulness. Because we can have all the desire in the world to let go of attachment and get rid of it, but if we don't have mindfulness, it's not going to happen. Because what's going to happen is what's happening now, of course. Some pleasant stimulus comes, before we know it, we're caught up in craving and attachment. And our mind is out of control often. So if we want to deal with attachment, we need to notice it before it takes control of our mind. So we have a little window of opportunity from when attachment is starting to arise until it's got hold of our mind. Maybe only a second or two. Now we're usually not able to catch that window because our mindfulness is not very good, and we only notice the craving and attachment when it's already got control of our mind. At that stage, about all we can do is get out of that situation before we say and do things we're going to regret. But the key, of course, is to catch it before it takes control of our mind. And if we cultivate mindfulness, and that's what we're doing, of course, in Shamatha practice, we're strengthening our mindfulness, we'll be able to pick up the attachment earlier as it's just arising. And then we're still in control. And one very good thing we can do then is just observe it. Because if we can observe the attachment, we're free of it. We're free of it. And also then, if we're observing the attachment, we're no longer focusing on the thing that's feeding it. So there's nothing feeding it anymore. So it can't go anywhere, it will just pass. So this is one very effective way of dealing with attachment, it's just observing it. In addition to that, we can do what's called apply antidotes. And these antidotes can take on different forms, and often they come within the two main wings of practice of wisdom and compassion. So in terms of an antidote from the wisdom part of the practice, and we'll look at these in more detail, of course, in the second half of the retreat in terms of Vipashyana. One very good antidote, in fact often is listed as the antidote to attachment in the text, is impermanence. Is to see the thing or person that we're having an attachment towards as changing moment by moment. And if we can see that experientially, then there's nothing for attachment to grab because there's just flow there. So this is a very effective antidote. Another antidote, which we're going to look at also in detail, is what's called this wisdom of emptiness. Because when we're having craving and attachment now for a personal thing, it really does seem like the beauty is there in the object. So to apply this emptiness antidote, we investigate the personal thing and look for the beauty. Where is the beauty in that personal thing? And then we'll really come to appreciate that there's no beauty there. That actually beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And then that attachment will drop away. So that's from the wisdom wing. And from the compassion wing, we can also apply an antidote, and that is, particularly with respect to if it's a person we're having attachment to, then that attachment is there because we have a very narrow perspective of simply first-person perspective. How is this situation affecting me? Ah, that person seems to be the source of my happiness, attachment. Me, 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 me. So a good antidote is shift perspective, take second-person perspective. How is this person seeing this situation? And then by shifting perspective, we can really start to shift attachment into loving kindness. So that can be very helpful as an antidote to attachment with respect to a person. So that's very simply some ways to deal with attachment. Any last question before we take an afternoon tea break?
So to be in happiness, you need to work.
You need to work.
To work.
Well, you need to put some effort, yes.
Yeah,
We need to change habits. Whatever we want to achieve, we need to put some effort, otherwise it doesn't magically happen, unfortunately. Okay, then let's leave it there. Take a tea break, and so then at 4:15, the city will be yoga in here for an hour till 5:15, and then a short break, and then 5:30 come back, and we'll go back into the Shamatha practice, and we'll look at the practice of focusing at the nostrils at 5:30. Let's take a break.